My name is Janelle. I am the founder of JS Self Care Coaching Services. Today's special guest, we have Twanna from Own Your Own Fly. Without further ado, Twanna, can you please introduce yourself and tell us your journey to self care? And please also tell us about your business, Own Your Own Fly.
Hello, hello. How y'all doing? My name is Twanna Evans. I am the founder and CEO of Own Your Fire LLC, where I help women and girls cope with everyday situations. And I actually started this self-care journey about 6, 7 years ago. But my journey started long before that. But I went on my own personal journey about 6 or 7 years ago. And that journey, I actually up and left my I packed up me and my three girls, and I left my son, which is my fourth child. I have four children, and I left my son back home in Rock Hill, South Carolina, where I'm from, and I moved to Columbia, South Carolina. Packed up me and my three girls and just left. No one knew where I was moving to. No one knew why I was moving, and I just left. And I left based on my son. One of the reasons I left my son behind is because my son had got into a lot. He began to on the gang bang, hang out in the street. He wouldn't come home. I couldn't sleep, worried about where he was at. I'm out looking for him all day and night. And it got to the point where I was living up in the housing, and they told me that I either had to move from Rock Hill, South Carolina, and not bring my son and put him on my lease, or they would take it from me. And at the time, I was working at a basic minimum job. So, I couldn't afford to just walk away from everything that I had, everything I was, because, my son couldn't be on my lease anymore. So I had to make one of the hardest decisions was to decide whether, I want to continue raising my daughters and have a better life for them because they were still younger, or to, you know, have my son that was 18. You're going to be 18. So I had to make a choice. My son, he didn't grow up in that environment that he was trying to live, but because his dad grew up that way, and when he began to go into his teenage years, and he would hear people around the neighborhood and people in the streets talking about how his dad did this, how his dad had his money, how his dad was you know selling drugs and doing everything that he was doing. So he wanted to mimic that. He wanted to do what his dad did, wanted to live up to that, and he began to act out. Now, I wasn't, a saint either growing up. I had my things, and I did things. I actually became pregnant at the age of 14, which was, I was pregnant with him, which is my first child, and I had him at 14, and then I had my daughter right behind him 9 months later by the same guy. So now I have two kids by the age of 15 by this drug dealer that I was dating, and the cycle continued. When I left that drug dealer, I began to date another drug dealer, and it wasn't that I saw that or I was, my mother raised us around that. But the thing is that my mother was a Christian. She was very, God driven. She was very, purpose driven. While my dad was a crackhead. So now you got a a Christian and a crackhead, and I'm in between. I'm in the middle. So I'm trying to find my way. So I had to kind of put both of them together, put my street, knowledge together versus also my God given, together as well.
Wow. So you had two children by one man who is a drug dealer, another two children by another man who is a drug dealer. And you were all of between 14, 15 when you were having these children. You say your mom, she went to church, she kept a clean house, she was godly. And then on the other hand, you had this dad who was a crackhead. Did your dad sell drugs?
No, my dad never sold drugs, but my dad was more of him and his side was more so they were drunks, they were boosters, they were gamblers, they were, they was in the streets very, very heavy on a different level than what my mother was and her sisters was. So it was like I picked up, both. And I had my times where I was going through both. But times I was going through, wanting to do what my dad's people did, you know what I'm saying? And I had a time where I wanted to do what my mother did. So I had to fight and battle between, what I'm saying, which one do I do? Until I realized, okay, I got to find me. I have to be me. I have to own who I am and accept the part of me that I am and not try to fit in on either side. Be me.
So what drove you to drug dealers? What was it? The fast money, the fast cars? What was
Um,
it that
when it came
enticed
to
you?
drug dealers, what it was is that, living with my mother and being raised by my mother was very perfect per se. She was very, everything had to be perfect. Everything had to be done a certain way. Everything had to go a certain way. Had to be clean. Had to be put in a certain spot. Everything had to be organized. It had to be, for example, as young girls, it was four children. It was two boys and two girls. Me and my sister, we would get in trouble. We would get punished if our panties and bra sets didn't match. Like that's how much everything had to be perfect and put together. So when I would go to school and go to the outside world and go to my dad, other things would attract me to where I felt like I wanted to do that. I wanted to try that because it was my norm. So it was attractive to me. So when I met him and, all the issues that I was fighting and things that was going on, with trying to be like my dad, trying to be like my mom, to where I didn't know how to hide my pain. I didn't know what to do with my pain and my hurt. So I didn't do drugs. I've never done drugs. I never smoked or drunk anything in my life. My mother haven't either. And so when I met the drug dealers, it was like the money that they had was helping me hide my pain. It was helping me deal with my pain. So instead of getting drunk or smoking weed to hide my pain or cover my pain, spending money begins to cover up my pain. So they had the money to spend and didn't care, And my mother being a single parent of four, everything had to be in a schedule. So she had to add it in. Well, you need new shoes, so it had to be added in at a scheduled time, at a pay period time, at a payday time. When drug dealers, there was no time for nothing. If you wanted, you wanted. If you got it, you got it. So
Mm.
there was no no time on that. And as I began to mature and as I get to the level where I no longer wanted to be a part of the drug dealer life, because I was always a girlfriend. I never touched it. I never saw it. Because my uncles would always say, if he loved you, he would never bring it to where he lay his head at. He would never bring it to you. So I didn't allow the men to do that. So I never seen drugs before. I never touched it. I never sold it or anything. But I knew what they were doing. So I would be the girlfriend that would pick up the money. I always picked up the money. Like every time they had a money coming in or another drug dealer under them owed them money, I would go meet to pick up the money. Like I was the money. So money became my pain. Money became my escape. It became my getaway.
So did you ever save any of this money, or as you got it in one hand, you spent it in the second hand?
I began to save the money because once again, tapping into my mother's side, I kind of knew that even though what they doing was wrong, I also knew that it was gonna come a point in time where it was gonna have to end. Fast money was gonna end. So what I would do was that I would work. I worked from the age of 15 up. I worked because I knew me working would cover up the money that I had. So if anybody ever came, police knocking our doors or kicking my doors, I had jobs and paychecks that could show, okay, I can afford to have this money. I can afford to live this lifestyle that I'm living. Because I was in management at the age of 18. I became a management of McDonald's. So I knew that at some point in time, I was going to have to be able to cover for and be able to protect my access, basically, my money and my children. So if he had to go away, which my second kid's father, he away for about he got 2 years, but he only had to do like a maybe like 9 months or so. But for them 9 months, he made I was good. I kept money on his books. My bills kept paid. I had so much money. I really didn't have to work, but I continued to work so I could, what I'm saying, cover up for that while he was gone. So
Are you guys still together?
no, me and the second one is not together. We were together for 9 years. Um, and we separated because I no longer wanted to live that lifestyle. I no longer wanted to be the girlfriend of a drug dealer because I tell women all the time, yes, it's fun dating a drug dealer. You can buy anything you want, how you want, and when you want. But even though he may not be cheating, and even though you may have other money, you still lonely. And I was still lonely because he still never was there. He had to go make sales, he had to make moves, and I was still lonely. And I no longer wanted that feeling. I wanted to have someone there for me. and I didn't want to live that girlfriend lifestyle.
So is that what prompted you to move, or you still stayed in your area? You just broke up with your children's father.
Well, I just broke up with him. I still stay in Rock Hill, South Carolina. I just, I told him that that I wanted to be married, and I gave him an ultimatum that he's going to have to marry me, and we was going to have to leave his lifestyle behind. And he wasn't ready to do that at the moment. So when he came home, I had him packed up and left his stuff in the house, and he didn't know where I was for almost a year. I had my brother and my father just moved me out, and I just left his stuff in there. He came home to just his stuff. I was no longer there.
So he chose his lifestyle over his children and of course you.
Right. Well, he looked at it as he said he chose the lifestyle over me, never over his children, because I had four children. The last two was his, but he raised all four of them. The first one was not a man. I mean, I'm saying he didn't take care of my older two children, but I never held it against him because we were 14 and 15. We were young, and we didn't
Mhm.
know no. He knew no more than me, but just so happened in society and life, a woman's gonna be stuck with a child before the man 9 out of 10. So, what I'm saying? By him being 15 as well, I'm 14. He didn't, we didn't know no better. So I couldn't hold it against him that he was a horrible dad because he was, and he still, slacked a lot, even though the kids are grown, like 22 and
Mhm.
23. But, I had to keep pushing. So, yes, I did end up leaving. I stayed in the same city, but I did end up leaving him. And then I ended up getting married, and I married a man that I knew I did not love. I married a man
Right.
who
Can you tell us about that?
Sure. I married a man I was dating for a couple years, and because I used to battle and deal with rejection of my mother. I was always to the point I didn't care what the street said about me. I didn't care how they talked about me, whether they liked it, I didn't like it. I was good on that end. Like some people really care what other people think about them. I never cared about that. I always cared about my mother, and about pleasing her and making sure everything was pleasing to her. Even in my older days, in my 20s and 30s, I always wanted to please her, wanted to hone her to be proud. As long as she was proud, I was okay. And I had to realize on the self care journey that she might not never tell me she's proud of me. She might not never tell me good job. But I had to realize that that's just who she is, and I can't control other people's feelings and thoughts. So that's why I began to, take care of myself and do better for myself. So when I got married, I finally divorced him because I realized he wasn't in love with me. He was in love with my lifestyle because I was so used to certain things. Even though I wasn't in the drug industry no more or in the dating drug dealers, I still was used to having nice things. So I still worked my ass off to get it. You know what I'm saying? So when he met me, I was in a 4 bedroom, 2 bathroom. I was living like how I do. And he was so accustomed to that because he didn't live like that. You know what I'm saying? He lived in a trailer park and he lived in a small city town called Great Falls, to where he wasn't accustomed to my living. So when he saw how I live, I think he was more in love with my living than he was with me. But it took me being married to him 3, 4 years before I realized, you know what, this man don't love me. He loves my lifestyle. He loves the nice things that I want to have and get and live. So I was miserable. My hair was falling out. I was stressed out all the time. I was having seizures. I was just sick, and it wasn't good for me. So because it wasn't healthy for me, I had to get out of it. I had to make a decision to leave. So I divorced him as well.
So now that you had the divorce, do you still get those seizures or
Yes,
they stop?
I'm a very, very big mental health advocate. I still have seizures. I actually was having seizures before my husband. I've been having seizures ever since I was 15. And no, and when I found out my seizures were called pseudo seizures, which means nothing is chemically imbalanced. It's controlled by your stress and your anxiety level. And once I learned that if I could learn how to control my own stress level and my own things by going through a self care, I realized that I can control that. So once I learned to care for myself and do better for myself, because I was a yes girl. I was one of them girls. Anything you need, yes, I do it. Yes, I take you. I could not have no gas in my car, but you call me, I'm still gonna take you. And you don't offer any gas money, I'm not gonna pressure, I'm not gonna bring it up, I'm just gonna take you. Um, Family with friends would call, can you pay my light bill? And then I would go on social media or I would go to their house and they in Miami and they out of town and they partying and I just gave you money to pay your light bill. You know what I'm saying? So I was a yes girl. I was a yes to everybody and everything. You know, trying to be God when I ain't God, like trying to be what God would be to somebody, and that's not, and I'm not Him. He's the only perfect person there is, and it's not me. So I would
That's right.
stress myself out, get anxiety and worried about other people. Like I cannot know you from a can of paint, and you tell me your story in Walmart that you struggling, you something. I'm at home that night, can't sleep, trying to figure out how can I help you, how can I figure out who you would. I don't even know you. That's the type of person that I was, and I had to realize that wasn't healthy for me. So once I started to care for myself and take myself on this journey, then my seizures began to calm down way more. They went from every other week to once a month to once a year to now every 3 years because I learned to control it.
Wow. So Tawana, do you now know how to say no?
Yes, I know how to say no. When I tell you, I can tell you no and be so comfortable with it, like it was just like sometimes now because I finally begin to accept my truth, and my truth is my truth. Like whether you agree with it or not, it's my truth. That's what's inside of me, and that's what I believe, and that's what I want, and that's who I am now. So I begin to own my fly. I begin to first find the first love myself. That's what FLY stands for. First love yourself. I begin to first love me and who I am.
So what does that look like now that you have learned to love you? What does life look like for you now? Now that you know how to say no, you left a lifestyle. What does own your own fly look like to you now?
But first of all, during this process of loving myself, because I began to do self care when I created FLY, First Love Yourself, when I created my curriculum for that. When I tell you, I was sitting here crying, real tears, taking myself through my own process because FLY, the F stands for find out what's going on with you, what's causing you to be how you are. The L is to let it out. You have to let out what's inside of you. I had to write a letter to fear. I had to write a letter to shame. I had to write a letter to embarrassment for me to let it out. And then you is getting back to the you should be, not the you that others want you to be. So now that I'm at a place where I'm FLY, I want everybody to be FLY like me. You know what I'm saying? I want everybody to be this FLY person. And FLY does not mean the clothes you drive, the car you drive, the clothes you wear. That's not FLY. FLY is inside of you. What you showing who you are. So now I'm at the you where I'm just when I tell you it's a beautiful look, it's a totally different look on life. Like you don't let things bother you. You have to understand that something is going the way it's meant to be. If you can't change it. So I always tell people that the difference in you is what defines your FLY. Everything that's different about me is what made me who I am. You know, I used to be so comfortable in clubs and parties. I used to be in the corner half sleep. But that's because they wasn't me. I was just trying to be with my sisters and my friends and wanted to be with them. But if y'all can't be with me now on my level, then we can't be together. We can't be a part of each other's lives because I no longer want to do that. If I want to tell you I'm gonna sit at home on my chair and watch Law and Order all day, then ain't nothing you can do about it. That's what I want to do.
I love it. So do you provide a service for other women and men with Own Your Own Fly?
Yes, I do. I provide coaching services for women and girls on a day-to-day basis because sometimes don't I love counseling. I hate the fact that people feel like counseling mean that you're slow or something wrong with you. It does not. Counseling is one of the best things that I've ever encountered. But sometimes when you go to counseling, don't you start from your childhood and dig in what happened when you was little. But at sometimes you want to just talk to somebody right in there. Like you need that person to talk to right now where you can hear yourself speaking. Because sometimes when you hear yourself talk, you're like, oh no, that don't sound good. You hear it and you realize it ain't good before
Mm-hmm.
you do it. So I'm available for people who you see the car at the moment. You know what, Twanna, I'm by, and I have it all the time. People call me, like, for example, this one girl, she called, she was like, Twanna, my boyfriend is cheating on me and I want to go cheat back. I'm like, no, 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 hold on, let's talk about it. Calm down,
Mm-hmm.
because you need to talk right then and there. You don't want to start from your childhood just to get to what you're going through right now at the moment on the phone. So I do provide those coaching services. I am the coping coach. I am the support sister. I help you cope with what you're dealing with right now at the moment.
Wow. So if someone needed your services and they were a male, would you turn a male away or refer them to someone else? How would you help males?
I definitely would not turn them away. I would help them as well. I've had a few males reach out to me, and I've helped males along the way. That's not my focus, but I am able and comfortable enough to help a man as well. Most of the time, males call me when when they happen to take care of their mother, or they call me to go to a funerals and deal with funeral stuff. Because I had one guy, he hired me to show up for the funeral, for the wake, because he needed somebody there. He had no sisters and brothers. He needed somebody to comfort him, and that's what he hired me to do, and that's what I did. I showed up for him as well.
Wow, that's amazing. I never knew that people actually needed someone to show up for them for a funeral. But I'm glad that you did that because I didn't even realize that people are lonely at they don't have the circle of
Yep.
support.
So that's what they do. They would definitely hire me to do things like that. They hire me to, just to show up in general. Like that's why I'm a support. I'm a support since I believe strongly in support, and that's one of the things that I do. I support people to the best of my ability.
So, if you could leave this podcast with anything, what advice would you give the listeners to?
The first advice I would give them is that self care is very important, and self care and self maintenance is two different things. And your self care journey, it does not end. When I tell you it does not end, I am continuing to grow. I am continuing to learn, and sometimes I even fight with taking a few steps back. But as long as you don't wallow in it and stay there, it's okay. And I want everyone to know it is okay not to be okay.
Thank you. Say that again, please.
That is my motto on the self journey of mine, and I want you to please, anybody that's listening, know that it is okay. Okay, it's okay to say, you know what, I ain't okay today. It's okay to say, you know what, I'm having a bad day. It's okay to cry. It's okay to do those things. Just don't wallow and stay there. But it's okay not to be okay.
Absolutely. Tawana, what is your social media handles? And if you have a website that you would share with the audience listening?
I'm on all social media platforms. I am on your fly LSE.
And I want to thank you for sharing your story with Journey to Self Care. But before we end, how are your children doing now?
Right now, my children are great. My son is 23. He has made me a grandmother, so I am a grandmother of two. I have a granddaughter and a grandson. My middle daughter, which is my second child, she is 23. She's 22. I'm sorry, she's 22. She just moved into her very first apartment actually last week. I'm so proud of her. She is also a phlebotomist and now going to school for pharmacy. So she's doing great. My third child, she just graduated from high school last year, so she's beginning her journey, and that's a different journey on its own. I tell people all the time. My middle daughter, she is right now. She is dating another woman. So that was something that I had to adjust to and grow through. That's a total different story. But as a mother,
Wow.
you have to get on board. You have to love your children through it all. Even that you don't have to accept
Mhm.
it, but you have to love them through it. So, and my baby girl, she's
Yes.
14. She's in eighth grade. So she is just full riding from her between her older sisters and her mom and dad. She just got a maid right now. But
She's the
yeah,
baby.
she got it
So,
made.
yes. So I want to thank you for joining Journey to Self Care and thank you for sharing your story because there's a 14-year-old girl who needed to hear your story so that they know they could get out the game. They may have been drawn to the game because of the fast money, the nice cars, and they able to purchase themselves anything they want. But with your story, Tawana, you have just helped someone. And I want to thank you for joining Journey to Self Care.
Well, I thank you for having me. Before I leave, I do want to let all your audience know. I thank them for listening to me. I thank them for being a part. I am releasing my book. I have three books already, but they are a collaboration. They are anthologies. But I'm going to release my first and what about it's called Living a Backwards Life, and it's basically telling you how I began to live life backwards. Society feels like you should be a child, you should go to school, you should graduate, you should get a husband, and then you should have children. My life went totally backwards. I had the children first. So I would
Wow.
definitely, recommend that you all get my book and read my book. It's called Living a Backwards Life. And I thank you so much for listening.
When is the book coming
Right
out?
now, I'm taking pre-orders, but the book should be out no later than April.
Okay. So if anyone's listening, I'll make sure that I have Tawana's information in our show notes. So thank you again, Tawana, for joining
Thank you.
us.